Yeah, hi everyone. And I think it's a long day for everybody, but let me pull my slides and thank Taho for this opportunity where I plan to discuss over the next 15 minutes. I don't know how I will do it because this topic on pharmacovigilance it requires the entire session, a whole day session, I would say. So let me still try and and kind of and do justice. So a great panel discussion. And I'm Dr. Bhowmick. I'm actually at PLS Hospital, Calcutta, and I'm also working. I used to work as a clinical pharmacologist before I actually took up this role. So my topic is pharmacovigilance and ADR monitoring. And please let me know if you're able to see my slide.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. Hello, Gracie, ma'am.
Hi.
Right. So, what is pharmacovigilance? I mean, the pharmacovigilance entire ethos evolves around as our last panel discussion ended that we have to do no harm. It is a Hippocratic oath. The doctors who are sitting here, the nurses who are part of the audience, as well as the pharmacist, I think we all must understand that pharmacovigilance takes its origin from the Hippocratic oath, primum non nocere, which is please or we should never do any harm. So it takes its origin from two words, pharmakon, which is a Greek word, means medicinal product, and vigilare is a Latin word to keep watch. This is a quiz, and I think, being a doctor myself, we always get more interested if we get a clinical problem. And so I think this can happen to any of your patients. Patient X, which was suffering from pneumonia, who incidentally was suffering from pneumonia, was started with a new antibiotic, clarithromycin, 500 milligram, 4 times daily in the OPD. And 12 hours later, this very unfortunate patient comes back with chest discomfort and severe palpitation, resulting in admission in the hospital. So what is this particular event? Is this an adverse drug event? Is it an adverse drug reaction? Is this a serious adverse drug reaction? Or many of us are not sure about it. I mean, it's difficult on a virtual, virtual mode to ask you, but please keep in your mind what answer you would like to categorize this because we need to categorize these situations in our hospital when we report these kind of adverse drug reaction. So the WHO defines pharmacovigilance as the science and activities related to detection, assessment, understanding and prevention of adverse effects or any other drug-related problem. Please remember it excludes therapeutic failures, overdose, drug abuse, non-compliance, and medication errors. So many a times I have seen as an NABH assessor, the medication errors are reported as adverse drug reactions. I mean, we probably have to draw a line there. Not all medication errors are adverse drug reaction. If you look at the history, and this is a tragic story which evolved in around 70 years back in the United Kingdom, 1959, these children, phocomelic children, were born to at least 10,000 mothers because their mothers took this drug, thalidomide, which was given for early morning sickness. And incidentally, this drug did not have any safety data in pregnancy. The history starts with 1961, where the thalidomide tragedy strikes United Kingdom, and then in 1963, the World Health Assembly for the first time takes a resolution on adverse drug reaction. 1968, WHO pilots the International Adverse Drug Reaction Monitoring System, and 77, WHO advocates establishments of national centers for drug monitoring. In 1962, on the other side of the Atlantic, where in 1961, where the United Kingdom, thousands of patients took thalidomide. In the United States, the Kaffir-Harris Amendment was brought because the drug controller of FDA did not allow the thalidomide drug to enter the USA, and that saved millions of American women from giving birth to this phocomelia children. And this is one of the important amendments, the Kaffir-Harris Amendment, which was brought in 1962, which made it mandated for any pharmaceutical company which had to market a drug in the United States to give animal pregnancy data regarding the safety of that particular drug when that drug had to be used in case of pregnant mothers. 1964, the yellow card scheme, which is a very easy reporting scheme for patients as well as the healthcare workers to the UK drug regulator, was introduced. Only 1986 did India propose the program, but over late 1997, India joined the WHO ADR monitoring program. So why do we need pharmacovigilance? And we need to go look into clinical trials because as you see over a period of time, as drugs are developed, starting from the preclinical phase in the animals to phase one in probably 50 to 100. First, the first phase one happens in 50 to 100 healthy volunteers, or maybe in oncology happens in cancer patients. There's very limited number of data regarding the safety of these drugs. But moment the drug gets approved and enters the phase four, millions and millions of patients are getting those kind of this medication, and the safety profile cannot be predicted. So we need strategies and actions to minimize the risk. So there is the safety data from preclinical studies becoming, it is not reliable, and hence, because we use this product or the new medication or all our medications in millions of patients, we need pharmacovigilance, and pharmacovigilance is required to promote rational use of medicines. What is the economic burden? The economic burden is very high. It's the data from the US says that average $2,262 were being spent at least a decade back. And in India, the paper which is published in Maharashtra says that one Indian ADR cost you at least 6,000 rupees. This data is 2007. So probably we are spending close to an 18,000 rupees. It's 3 to 4 times now for managing one ADR in an Indian hospitalized patient. So who are at greater risk? The children and the elderly age group, the physically challenged people, the patient receiving multiple drugs like in ICU, patients and geriatric patients on multiple medications, and anyone who is being discharged. So Gracie ma'am was mentioning about medication reconciliation, and that's an excellent strategy to prevent ADR drug monitoring or to prevent ADR in patients. We have to ensure medication reconciliation. A few definitions in pharmacovigilance: adverse drug event. This is an event or untoward medical occurrence which does not have a causal relationship with the treatment. Moment it has a causal relationship, it becomes an adverse drug reaction. This is as defined by WHO in 1972. So how do you causally assess? There are two scales: the WHO UMC scale. UMC is Uppsala monitoring scale, and then you have the Naranjo scale. So you take the history of the patient and you analyze the situation, and the WHO UMC scale is utilized by many of the countries where you can categorize the reaction as certain, probable, possible, unlikely, conditional, and unclassifiable. But we use, in our hospital, we commonly use the Naranjo's ADR causality scale. If you look at this scale, this is 10 questions, and you ask the questions to the patients if possible, or at least get the history from the patient party. And these questions give you a score. Higher is the score, higher, there's a high probability that the ADR was related to this particular medication. Lower is the score, the possibility is less. So a serious adverse drug reaction is a special adverse drug reaction which results in death or requires hospitalization or can prolong your hospitalization. It can result in persistent or significant disability or incapacity. It is life-threatening or can result in congenital anomalies. See, so it can be also be, the ADR can be graded as mild, moderate, and severe. But when we look at our patient, this particular patient who came to the hospital with pneumonia, got clarithromycin, but got admitted because of palpitation and chest discomfort, this patient had serious adverse drug reaction. So you can classify ADR on basis of onset, severity, and type. Onset, if it's an acute onset ADR, means something happening within 60 minutes of taking the medication. Subacute is within 1 to 24 hours, and latent is more than 2 days. Various classification of ADRs can be done, and type A is the extension of pharmacological effect. So you're giving a drug like a beta blocker, propranolol, and it results in heart block. So it is extension of the beta blocking action of propranolol. So it is type A ADR. Type B is idiosyncratic or immunological, where you can't predict. So children, especially children below 5 years of age, chloramphenicol is not used because if you use it, there can be chances of plastic anemia. Very typical example of type B. Type C is associated with chronic use or long-term use, and for the examples would be antimalarials like chloroquine causing ocular toxicity or retinal deposits. And type D is delayed effects, which are carcinogenic effect or immunos, especially seen with immunosuppressant, or teratogenic effects seen with anti-epileptic drugs like phenytoin. So how do you report in a good pharmacovigilance atmosphere? You can have passive surveillance, which is done by majority of the Indian hospitals. You can have stimulated surveillance. You can have active surveillance. You can do comparative studies, and you can do descriptive studies. Passive surveillance is the commonest thing because you don't have, majority of the hospitals don't have clinical pharmacists. Being an NABH assessor for the last 10 years, I can tell you that this is one of the most neglected area because when the ADR is, this is not combed or I would say actively screened, people say we hardly have 1 or 2 ADRs in the hospital. So this passive surveillance system is not a foolproof system, whereas you can actually do a stimulated reporting where the healthcare professionals report ADRs in specific situations and is effective in generating spontaneous report for adverse events of the drugs identified in certain particular post-marketing phase. So this is our study which we did in 2011. We were non-ionic contrast medium in Indian population. Interestingly, non-ionic contrast medium is being used in CT scan and MRI patients, but till 2011, we did not have any data of the safety profile. We looked at our hospital data of 3,700 patients, and we found out that this is a very, very safe molecule, just like how literature has been reported from United States or from Japan. Active surveillance is a pre-organized process. You have more information on individual adverse events, than especially with respect to sentinel events and cohort events. And this is our study, which we did way back in 2009, where we published the adverse drug reaction monitoring in psychiatry outpatient department of a large government teaching hospital. And we looked at 2,000 patients who were coming to the psychiatry OPD, and we found out that many of the adverse drug reactions in these psychiatric patients, they differ from the one which is reported in the Western literature. So we need to remember, ladies and gentlemen, that our people are unique. India is actually, I think we are United States of India. We are 30 different states, or rather 30 different countries with a common flag. So whatever is our data is very unique data, and we need to publish our data. And once you report, this report goes into the Pharmacovigilance Program of India, which I'm going to share in a while from now, through this database, which is VG-Flow. And you can use the VG base. Ultimately, to the VG base is a WHO global database. So if you are reporting, ladies and gentlemen, don't think that your report is going wastage, because India is participating in the global reporting system, which is based out of Uppsala in Sweden, because Uppsala has the World Health Organization Collaborating Center for International Drug Monitoring. And we, through the Pharmacovigilance Program of India, participate in it. Why do we need pharmacovigilance in our country? We are more than 1.3 billion people now. I think that needs to be updated. We have vast genetic and ethnic variability. So Gracie ma'am and me have definitely different genes, and we are going to differently react to, I would say, the antihypertensive drugs very, very differently. We have variation in disease prevalence. And as I mentioned, our areas can bring about significant clinical and economic burden to our country. So PVPI program in India started very, very slow. Only in 2004, the National Pharmacovigilance Program of the country started with World Bank and WHO support. And in 2011, since 2011, the National Coordination Center has shifted from AIMS. Right now, the body which runs the Pharmacovigilance Program of India is the Indian Pharmacopoeia Commission in Ghaziabad. And I want to congratulate the Indian Pharmacopoeia Commission for doing extensive capacity building program and setting up the adverse drug monitoring centers in various private and government centers. Our hospital is an AMC in West Bengal, and we report the hours reports into the VG flow of the country. So there has been a great activities through the Pharmacovigilance Program of India where there's engagement with the pharmaceutical industry. And India is only one of the few countries which has an Android mobile app for ADR monitoring. And there's continuous, as I mentioned, training programs being undertaken by the government of India. Our reporting, when I say our, your and my reporting has resulted in changing of the prescribing information. So BCG vaccine, India gives the largest number of BCG vaccine. When we were giving BCG vaccine, many centers reported BCG vaccine can cause lymphadenopathy. So that change has come in the prescribing document. Doxycycline, an anti-cancer drug, can cause a candidiasis. Our reporting has made it mandatory that the doxycycline prescribing information should have this information. There are various other drugs which are in the pipeline where our reporting can change the prescribing information, can make the doctor and the nurses and the pharmacist aware. So we must report, we should report. So reporting can be done in India by healthcare professionals and consumers. We allow reporting, the government allows reporting through the reporting forms, telephonic reporting, emails, and mobile application. So this is the suspected adverse drug reaction reporting form, which is easily downloadable from the internet. It has the patient information. You need to give the suspected adverse reaction report, when it started, when it recovered. If it did not recover, don't write the rate, date, what are the suspected medication, and finally, I would say, and finally, we have to give the reporter details and send it through the AMC to the regional center, where in the AMC we put the specific unique ID number, and this is scanned and uploaded into the system, and where the regional centers send it to the National Indian Pharmacopoeia Commission, which is a national coordinating center in the country. There is a helpline. This is a number, and India is one of those few countries in the world who have this helpline number dedicated to pharmacovigilance, which operates 9 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. from Monday to Friday. And if you want to send the ADR through email, this is the email ID where you can send your ADR forms in the country. There are various regional training centers in the country, and in Eastern region, in our region, we have the Department of Pharmacology, Institute of Postgraduate Medical Education Research in Kolkata, which is the training center, whereas in Western and Northern region, these are the centers. And before I end, I would say that Pharmacovigilance of Vaccines is an ongoing program, because vaccines are drugs as well. And the COVID vaccination program showed us that how important is it that we need to really monitor our vaccination adverse event, because that can make the vaccines more safer. The serious adverse event following immunization is investigated by the district immunization officer, and every state has an adverse event following immunization committee, which does the causality assessment. Hemovigilance Program of India has been launched in 2012 because many believe, and I would say many don't know, that blood is a drug. So blood also has to be monitored under the Hemovigilance Program, and this program is really picking up in a big way in the country. And I would say that India is one of those few unique countries which is also doing the Material Vigilance Program, which has been launched by the DCGI in 2015 at the Indian Pharmacopoeia Commission, which talks about the adverse event following implantation of any devices. So any implantation of devices related and that causing any adverse event or adverse drug event, they have to be reported, because the medical devices also, ladies and gentlemen, are drugs. So the primary function of this particular program is to look at various risk ratios of various medical devices, and it is by the government of India through the CDSCO, and this makes the use of devices very safe in our country. So in our country, we have various reporting by the healthcare workers, but we need to improve. So to summarize my presentation, I would say that ADRs are common entity in healthcare. So if you are in a hospital which says that we don't have any ADR, really something is going on wrong terribly somewhere. It is an inherent risk of using medications and does not signify negligence of healthcare providers. I think last session I was hearing that there's always a tendency to blame healthcare workers, and I personally make this statement to the clinicians that if your prescriptions are generating ADRs, it doesn't mean you have prescribed wrongly. Some of it might be, but 90% of it not. Not. It is an inherent risk of using a medication, so please report. We need self-improvement activities such as identification, reporting, analysis of these errors which result in ADR by dedicated team, and I believe it should be by a clinical pharmacologist at every hospital. The goal has to be to develop a culture of ADR reporting and pharmacovigilant healthcare system. And I strongly support the view that nurses and pharmacists curriculum should include pharmacovigilance to strengthen pharmacovigilance program of India. Because to conclude, I would say that there are no biologically safe drugs. There are only safe physicians, safe nurses, and safe pharmacists. Let us all aspire to become one of them. And last slide,